morning. Happy State of Jefferson Day to you. This is Lou Benninger, and we're out here at the Patriot on top of Mount Huth. We're actually, Wikiman and I are actually here looking at each other through the glass. We're here at the same time. We're live, and we actually made coffee. It worked. The water's on. Live stream, they tell me, is working. So it's a good day. It's a good day. So this is part of the Obama resistance. This is the first time in the history of the United States that a former president is trying to overthrow the current president. It's also the first time that no matter what is done that is positive and turns out well, it's always bad with the anti-Trumpers. So that's why you can't believe anything you read in the paper anymore here on the news. Because no matter how low the unemployment rate gets, or how much peace there is, or North Korea hugging South Korea, or whatever, it's all going to be bad. So we're living here in the state of Jefferson. I'm just making a faith statement here. But we're still under the rule of, as one of my friends says, California. And on the 69th page of the California statewide direct primary election, Tuesday, June 5th, 2018, official voter information guide that I got after I voted, is the name of Xavier Becerra. If you want to look at what a Mexican mafia member looks like in a suit, come on over to page 69 of that big thick book. I think it's almost 100 pages long. And this shows you how screwed up California is. What he's running on, his pitch, his couple hundred words here, says that he's going to be known for taking on the Trump administration. This guy is the chief law enforcement official in the state of California, and his goal is to take on the Trump administration. And NRA, that'd be the National Rifle Association, and Big Oil. Now, I get a kick out of this because those guys in Sacramento always drive the biggest SUVs around, but they're always criticizing Big Oil. The reason is they want them to donate money to them, and big banks. So that's his pitch. Trump administration, he throws in sex traffickers, but they don't ever arrest the guys that are in the legislature. So I always wonder what's going on. And he's talking about he's going to go after for-profit colleges. In other words, this socialist, if you are going to make a profit at anything you do, even though you may have the hottest, best college in California, but if you make a profit on it, he's going to try to destroy your operation. He'd rather have a not-for-profit or a government college that is a total loser. You got to read this. Xavier Becerra, page 69. If you haven't voted yet, even if you had, you cut it out, put it on your refrigerator, just to remind you what kind of nutcases are running the country. So if you stumbled in and you don't know the routine around here today, you can dial us up today for the first time, it seems like, in a month, 530-742-5555. This is a pro-choice operation, just like the abortion industry. So if we need, if we feel like taking your call, we will. If it interferes with our career or what we had on plan today, we will abort it. And we may gender select today, because that's what they do on abortions nowadays. 742-5555. If you're out in one of these fringe areas where the signal gets weak, you can go to the computer and check us out at kmycradio.com and then click on the Listen Live button. Or if you get distracted today, or there's a crisis around the house and you got to quit listening, don't worry, because Chris Starkey over at One Eye Blind Media, it's a YouTube channel, One Eye Blind Media. On that channel, you can click on the Listen click on Live with Lou, and you can pick whatever show you want to listen to. It's a little different. He has to edit out some of the YouTube clips I use because there are copyright issues when you get over to YouTube. So there you have it. That's the full meal deal right there. So we're going to be here till noon today. And listen, if you're thinking about voting and you're confused, don't, particularly when it gets to the district attorney and the sheriff, make sure you check it out. Just don't vote for somebody because they got a hot spouse or you like their sign. Unless, of course, if it's the sheriff and you really like the sign, then why don't you strap it on and maybe it's like a bulletproof sign, because the sheriff actually keeps folks under control, keeps a lid on this sucker until Jesus comes back, because it's gnarly out there. If you wonder about that, you should go for a ride along with one of the law enforcement agencies and have a consciousness expanding experience. Okay? Let's see. So last week I almost totally forgot about talking about Sutter Butte's Tea Party Patriots and Elite Universal Security till the last minute. We lost our mind. We were pre-recording and I got all sidetracked because I wasn't feeling the same, because we were in the middle of the night out here. And so I want to make sure I get this right today. And so the Sutter Butte's Tea Party Patriots has a meeting coming up, and it is on not on June 4. There is a meeting on June 4, but that's going to be kind of a special meeting. But there's a meeting this coming Monday night, the 21st, at their traditional location at the Church of Glad Tidings in Yuba City. They meet in Building 200. When you drive in the driveway, it's the first building on the left. Just find a place to park and scurry in there. They start at 6:30. You can get there by 6 if you want to get there a little early and get like hosed off and get something to drink. But they're going to have Chris Carlos, who is the attorney that's running for district attorney in Sutter County. Chris Carlos has formerly worked as a prosecutor for Sutter County, and then under Carl Adams left and went and worked in the criminal defense world, and now is running against the incumbent. So Chris Carlos will be there. You can ask him all the questions you want. It's a great opportunity. I appreciate all the different forums. I think the Appeal Democrats done one. The Chamber of Commerce might have done. Lots of people have done them. That's good for all of us in the community, so everybody can kind of ask questions and check people out. So Chris Carlos is going to be the only one there involving the Sutter County DA race, district attorney race, but he's going to be there. And also the Yuba County Sheriff's candidates will be there. Steve Durfer, who's been sheriff in Yuba County for 12 years, 3 terms, is retiring. So we have 2 men that are actually currently working for the Yuba County Sheriff's Department. Wendell Anderson and Teng Seichow are both running, and they will both be there. So go check it out. And thank you, Sutter Butte's Tea Party Patriots, for putting this on. There is no charge ever to attend a Patriot meeting, and they would like you to get more involved. They're looking for newcomers to get involved and have an impact on our community. And then just want to give you a heads up on June 4, which is their next meeting. They meet on the first and third Mondays. They're going to have an ice cream social, and they're inviting all the candidates to come to the event. And I don't know whether they're going to have tables set up or just it's going to be a last hurrah, because the next day's voting day, right? June 5. So June 4 will be the ice cream social, and everybody, all the candidates from all the different campaigns are going to be invited to come on out. Okay, we'll talk about more about the June 4th event next week. But Chris Carlos for Sutter County DA, plus Wendell Anderson and Ting Seichow that will be talking about the sheriff's race in Yuba County. All right. Well, I wanted to mention a couple things here right at the beginning while I'm fresh and thinking about it. I wanted to talk about some of the dishonesty and the campaigns. And I wanted to talk about the district attorney's campaign in Sutter County. You know, we hoped 4 years ago that once we got rid of Carl Adams, who we learned really too late in the game. He'd been in office over 30 years, and all of a sudden people began to discover he had a honesty problem, morality. All right. Well, we're into our second hour here today. We're talking about this. I think it's called Measure G. It's a request for Plumas Lake folks to authorize the school system when they want to start to begin to add an assessment of $72 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. So that would mean, let's see, if it was $300,000 house, which a lot of those houses out there in Plumas Lake are, that adds $221 or something like that, $220-something to your taxes. And your taxes are already, let's see, let me see. I figured it all out for you up here in this article. I'm just going to quote you right out of my article. So it's $216 for a $300,000 piece of real estate added on to your current taxes. So that amounts to an additional $7,680 on property taxes on top of whatever you're paying over 30 years, an additional $7,680 to borrow $20 million over 30 years. Now, depending on the interest rate, it could even be longer if interest rates go up. And interest rates, from what I've been told yesterday by someone who knows a lot about that stuff, an expert, they said, oh, yeah, interest rates are heading up. So anyway, I guess the supervisor, Bradford, was asked, well, why did he thought we needed a bond? Well, we need a new school. Now he was asked, why do we need a new school? It's kind of like the little kids. Remember when your kids are small and they, no matter what you say as an answer, they say, why? 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 It's just why? You're just digging a deeper hole. So when the question is, why do we need this? Do we have unused seats? And the fact is we do. So there's hundreds of seats that are vacant. So in other words, we could use more students and more families. And they don't use any modulars. The big thing nowadays is all over Marysville, we have modulars. All over the community, we have modulars, both counties. So we got a lot of room to expand. We could add some modulars and push this off down the road. I don't know. It ain't going to affect me a bit because I'm not moving out there. I like it out there. I think Edgewater subdivision and Plumas Lake are nice subdivisions. But I can't afford to live out there. And it's a ripoff. Building schools and government facilities all you're mandated to pay prevailing wages. That's a euphemism for union wages. And that's another twist to say that government is pro-union and anti-private sector. So they force everybody. It's a non-competitive situation where you got to all pay the same wages. Instead of letting everybody compete and let people take the job and pay whatever they want on the job for wages. So because it's a government job and we're having to pay Davis-Bacon law wages, we're actually paying 20 to 30% more in the labor rate to put up a government building like a school. It's a ripoff. It's a total ripoff on taxpayers. So most people are going to look at that Measure G and think, oh, a new school. Yeah, let's have a new school. Not even thinking they're going to have to pay for it out of their taxes. And, to me, I don't even think that people that don't own property should even get to vote on it. Remember last week I said that in the beginning, just white property owners got to vote in early America. And you think, oh, that's racist. Well, depends on how you look at it. If they're the ones paying all the bills, right? It's like if the parents are paying all the bills and you're an 8-year-old kid, you shouldn't have a heavy vote on what kind of house you buy because they're having to pay for it. So I don't think people that are non-property owners should even get to vote on these bonds because they're all based on property, getting them added onto your property. It's a total rip-off. So there you have it. And Mr. Bradford, he doesn't think I have my facts straight, but nobody, when he was confronted on, what part did he not get right? They didn't have, it's been like crickets all week. Nobody's responded. So anyway, that's on the ballot for the Plumas Lake, but these bonds pop up routinely in the district that you live in, the school district you live in. So a lot of times most people don't look any farther than their voter guide, which doesn't give you the type of detail I do in my article, which tells, how's the school doing? And how many kids do they have going? And what are some options we have if we didn't want to build another school right now? Right? This is the other thing that, with the member of the Magnolia Ranch subdivision, that Bradford was elected based upon Al Montaña's money. Al Montaña is a farmer in the Yuba Sutter area that has a lot of money, and he wanted to do this Magnolia Ranch subdivision, but a lot of the folks out there didn't want it. Not everybody. Some people wanted it. But a lot of people didn't want it, and they began to lean against it. So when it got held off or shut down, Montaña then found Mr. Bradford and funded him to get into office. Now, one of the promises to kind of sweeten the deal, you know how politicians sweeten the deal? If you vote this, we'll do this. So there's just kind of been this rumor of a promised high school out there. But people have no idea what a high school would cost. You know what? A friend of mine works for the district told me this. She said, Lou, a high school costs right at $100 million right now. Does that get your attention? $100 million, because they need a lot of different facilities in a high school that you don't have in an elementary school, right? Big gyms, and maybe a girls' gym and a boys' gym, and labs, science labs, and all kinds of stuff. Language labs, cost money. And they're just more expensive to put them together. $100 million. You think that we're talking about adding 200 and something, if you've got a $300,000 house, 200 and something dollars a year. Just think of if it was 5 times, that'd be $1,000 a year. Woo! Come on, baby. Maybe you like to pay all those taxes. I'm sick of it. It's a ripoff. That whole subdivision out there is a beautiful subdivision, but the cost thing is just egregious. I mean, I can't understand why anybody would buy a house out there and they wouldn't go down in one of the older homes in Marysville and buy down there and get a lot better. You wouldn't have to pay all those Mello-Roos fees and all that other baloney. Well, I'll just leave that with you. You can just ponder that. And if you run into Mr. Bradford, ask him those same questions I just asked. How about that? So let's see. I was going to say something more about this attorney's race, but I'll have to just think it through here for a minute. I forgot it. Hey, I wanted to mention this Tuesday is Harvey Milk Day, and he's my favorite pedophile. And so Xavier Becerra on page 80, page 69 of that voter pamphlet that came too late, he says he's going to, let's see what he said. I am going to go after NRA, the Trump administration, big oil, big banks, and I thought he said something about sex traffickers. There you have it right there, sex traffickers. He doesn't like sex traffickers. I don't know whether you do or not. Jason Parker, by the way, was catching those perverts, but I don't think you're going to see much more of that now since he went by the wayside. But Xavier Becerra said he's after sex traffickers. So Harvey Milk was kind of a sex trafficker, but Xavier Becerra's buddies down there in the state of California, they voted to set aside a day. Now, this Tuesday, as you heard in a commercial earlier from Randy Thomason with SaveCalifornia.com, you can look up his website and get all kinds of help for schooling, private schools, or school yourself and do your own education. And it's the most thorough informational website there is on family issues in schools and all that kind of stuff. SaveCalifornia.com, Randy Thomason. And so he has a whole write-up in there on this character pervert, Harvey Milk, that they extol because he got killed by a fellow supervisor in 1978. And so, but what basically Harvey was is they referred to him as the mayor of Castro Street, which is a street that homosexuals, the homosexual community kind of is the center of the homosexual community in San Francisco. And so Harvey, and hey, the way our society thinks right now is, hey, if you aren't with the one you love, then love the one you're with, right? Whatever flavor they are. Or the dog you're with, the cow they're with, the sheep you're with. Right? Everything's cool. And so, but with Harvey, he liked underage boys. Now that presents a problem because right now in the state of California, there still are laws that says you're not supposed to, if you're an adult, you're not supposed to have sex with underage people, male or female. Doesn't matter whether you're a adult male having sex with an underage female or underage male. Doesn't make any difference. It's bad. So Harvey liked underage boys, and he was involved in sex trafficking. In other words, he wasn't buying and selling them, but he was hustling them and encouraging them to come stay with him. So this Tuesday is Harvey Milk Day, and as Randy Thomason said, your kids may even get a video. Hollywood made a very positive video called Milk. Sean Penn played the principal person in it, Harvey Milk. And so they may get to see that film at school, or they may get a skewed version. It's like a skewed version of what the homosexual lifestyle is all about. In fact, Harvey, I told you this before, Harvey was not in favor of sticking with one partner. He thought, oh, well, this is my principal partner, but if we want to go have sex with somebody else, his feeling was that's a heterosexual value of sticking with one partner. And we don't necessarily, we're rejecting the whole heterosexual gig. So all bets are off. We're going to make up our own rules. So it's okay if we have multiple partners. Now, I'm just telling you what he believed. That's all. And how he lived. But that's what, and like in one sense, it's like, who gives a rip, right? It's his life. It's kind of like that Motown song. It's your thing. Do what you want to do. Right? So the problem comes when you send your kids to a government school and they get this crap shoved down their throat. As they said, some guy said to me, he said, I don't like Jesus. I don't like to have Jesus shoved down my throat. I said, I never seen a, you know how once in a while you'll see a snake and it will try to swallow a gopher or something big, and you think, I don't think he can pull that off. I told the kids in juvenile hall, I said, I've never seen Jesus halfway down anybody's throat yet. But what's happening is indoctrination of your kids in the public school system, and it's happening on a lot of levels. In fact, I just read where there's a school back somewhere, I didn't cut the article out, Midwest or something, where they were studying Islam, and they were teaching them how to write with calligraphy, and the slogan was, they were saying, I submit my life to Allah, right, and Islam. Well, I don't, and it wasn't an option that you can opt out of it, right? So recently we had a no opt out of the fact teaching on transgenderism. But the attorney for Orange County School District, Orange County Office of Education, said, well, yeah, but we still allow you to have freedom of speech and thought at home. You can't have it at school, but when you get home, you can have an open discussion about transgenderism. Well, thank you, Jesus, that the school district is now the one who delivers my rights. I can have my milk delivered, my mail delivered, my groceries delivered, and I can have a few rights delivered over here when I need them. That sound odd to you? If it doesn't sound odd to you, then you've really missed the whole point of the Constitution. And maybe you ought to try Venezuela instead of Ventura County. So anyway, Randy Thomas is encouraging people to keep your kids home on the 22nd. I believe that's this coming Tuesday. And just go do something great with them. Do something heterosexual, right? Just all healthy heterosexual. Just go get it on. Okay. I wanted to mention the folks over at another outfit that helps us stay on the air out here, helps me pay the big kahuna out here to keeps him. I need to keep the big kahuna smiling. When he ain't smiling, ain't nobody happy out here. So there's a security business been around here for years, and they're growing. It's Elite Universal Security, and they're located right here in Yuba County, but they're in Yuba, Sutter, Butte. They're all the way up to Redding. They're doing all kinds of work for the government, work for private industry. They not only provide jobs for people. In fact, they got jobs right now. But they have a school that if you'd like to get into the business, the guard business, security business, they'll put you through school out there. They got school classes online, and they got classes out at their site in Yuba County. So last week I was promoting May 26th and 27th classes, but they've changed those because of the Memorial Day weekend. And for those who don't know what Memorial Day is, it's a holiday to remember those who have died serving in the armed forces. So they said, you know something, we're not going to do classes that weekend. And instead, we're going to move them to June 9th and 10th. And they're going to do CCW, or that's the Exposed Firearms and Concealed Firearms course, on June 9th and 10th. And they're also going to have a June 23rd and 24th, same, going at it again. And then on June 2nd, they're going to have a taser class and pepper spray class. Lots of classes. So you can look for yourself. You can go on API-Academy, API-Academy.com, and you can check it out and see what classes are available, and you can dial them up at 749-0280. If you need a job, get a job. They'll help you get a job with them, and they'll give you some training, or maybe your goal is to move on and work for an institution like a hospital or the the government. You can work being a police officer, sheriff's deputy, or correctional officer inside the jail. And Monty over there at API Academy will prepare you for that and give you the courses that are transferable and get you on. Okay? So take that. How about that? But some of you out there in tweakers not allowed. You need to go to a rehab first. And for that, you need to go to a place like Feather or Men's Center or something like that and get yourself sobered up and cleaned up, healthy, get you a dose of Jesus, and then you can go back and work for a company where you can prove yourself trustworthy, all right? So, all right. Let's see what I want to do here. Oh, I got to go. You remember Nassar, Larry Nassar? This is the guy that for 25 years, he was doing the exams on females that were gymnasts and other athletes for the Olympics and for the University of Michigan. You remember that? And finally, a former athlete who had become an attorney prepared, and went back and took on the whole system, which was no small undertaking. And she threw the first stone. And of course, what I always say was, whenever you decide to hit somebody in the chin, don't just think you're going to do a one-punch fight. You better be prepared to defend yourself. And so she lost her friendships, the church she was going to. She got her butt kicked. But hundreds of other young women and grown women joined her, and they went after Nassar, and now he's serving, I think, about 175 years. But the government, being you and me, the taxpayers, the University of Michigan, the Olympics, are paying out $500 million, $500 million, to Nassar's victims. And it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. 332 girls and young women over 20 years. And the school says, saw no evil, heard no evil, didn't know jack. He was employed by the university. Those school officials have maintained they were unaware of the abuse until the media reports. How did the media get it and the school didn't have a clue? That's 10 times the number assaulted by Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky. Oh, Jerry's in jail as well. And when we got Jim Whitaker, and Jim Whitaker's file, they tell me, criminal file or criminal charges are sitting on the corner of Amanda Hopper, district attorney of Sutter County, sitting on her desk. Now you wonder, why wouldn't she want to prosecute him right in the middle of an election? Or why wouldn't that go to the Attorney General's office? Interesting. Or why would she accuse Jason Parker and David Williams, former employees over there, of crimes, and she'd do it in the paper? That doesn't seem legal to me. It seems like she should have just turned those charges, if they were real charges, into the Attorney General to go after those dirty dogs, if they were dirty. But I don't think they were. I just think it was all for an appearance, right? The appearance that I'm tough, and these people are bad, although they worked there for years with no blemish on their record. We'll be right back for another half a show. This is Lou Benninger, and you're listening to Live with Lou. This is the Patriot, KMYC 1410 AM. If you want to call it 742-5555. We're up here in the 530 area code in Northern California. Hopefully one day, miracle of God, will be the state of Jefferson and leave these turkeys behind down there in Sacramento. They always have all these different ideas. Split the state this way, split the state that way. I think up here in Northern California, we just want the state to cut right above Sacramento, right? Right above Sacramento. So I was talking before we took a little powder there and about this Larry Nassar and how this hundreds of victims later, this guy, the school says, never had a clue. Now, I just read a long article, and it's somewhere else in California, where a guy down there, very similar to the Whitaker situation, Jim Whitaker, who's a supervisor for Sutter County and was a physical education teacher for Yuba City Unified for a couple decades. A guy was in a similar situation down there. I can't remember the city. I didn't cut it. It was so long. I mean, there was a massive article in great detail, and it was. I read the article. It was fascinating because it had so many similarities to the Whitaker case. They finally paid this teacher off, and they had student after student come forward over the years. No one did anything about it. Identical to the Whitaker situation, and the argument that the author was making is that the school system in America is protecting perpetrators, particularly against women, young women, pedophiles, whatever you want to call them, predators. And that the lack of serious documentation and taking complaints seriously and investigating them and not having police investigate them puts everybody in a really weak position to prosecute and to find and get somebody out of the school system. And what this guy did is eventually go and got a job somewhere else because they paid him off, and nobody then, when they get a reference on employment qualities, no one will say anything bad because they'll get sued, even though they know kid after kid after kid has come forward. Now, the interesting thing here locally in Sutter County is we have complaints being made to law enforcement, and as I mentioned before the break, over the last term for Amanda Hopper, this whole thing has developed with Whitaker, who's a supervisor, right? And neither is she doing anything about it, and neither is the Attorney General of the state of California. Now, the Attorney General of the state of California, like all the rest of them down there in Sacramento, lacks any Spaldings. So it's a black hole down there to get anything done. But any accusations, like generally if somebody grabs a young woman in the rear or by the breast, that would be an assault charge of some sort, don't you think? I'm not an attorney, never been a cop, but I'm around them some. And I don't watch any shows on television because I don't have one. So, but it just seems to me there should be some kind of charges. Now, the interesting thing is, during the last 4 years of District Attorney Hopper, we've had two situations that have gone nowhere. One, Whitaker, and the other one is the death of Sarah Easton, who died from a gunshot. Some people feel 2 gunshots to the head. I don't know. I wasn't there. And I'm not a cop. I'm not privy to the investigation. Nobody wants to talk about it on the record. So it's been over 2 years. And the family never has got a resolve to it. Did she shoot herself? Once? Twice? It's tough to shoot yourself twice in the head. Or did somebody else shoot her? Did her husband shoot her? Aaron Easton. And it's tricky because Amanda Hopper's ex-husband, at least it was reported in the paper. I'd heard it, but I think it was reported in the paper that somebody said that he was involved with Sarah Easton. Things get complicated in small towns. Maybe they get complicated everywhere, but I haven't lived everywhere. But things are complicated around here, and we don't seem to get anything done. The police department didn't investigate these young women, and at least they didn't bring any charges. Or if they did bring charges, as I'm told, the case is sitting on the desk of the district attorney for Mr. Whitaker. It makes you think as a citizen, just an everyday citizen that goes to work at the local market or Walmart or work for a construction company, that if that happened to you, you'd be in jail. But if it happens to other people, if they're in the right place, have the right name, have the right position, they get a different treatment. So, anyhow, we got Mr. But the fascinating thing to me is two things on the Larry Nassar case. One, nobody knew anything until the media heard from some girls. Very fascinating, right? And then the blowback, the pressure on the ladies. And these weren't like teenagers anymore. These women were in their 30s. Some of them were attorneys and teachers, and they were accomplished athletes and coaches. And now they were coming back, and they said it costs us a lot to bring charges against this guy who was a dirtbag, right? It costs us a lot. And our reputation, people, just like people stand up in the supervisors' meetings with this Whitaker situation and keep asserting that all these girls who they don't even know, a lot of them don't even know each other, are all in it for the money. But the majority of them don't want any money. They're not even asking money. They're not even bringing charges. They just say, hey, something needs to be done. We already brought accusations years ago and nothing was done. We just want other girls to be safe. So to me, and what this other article, it's from California. If you want to search it out, I'm pretty sure it's California School. The other article brought up the fact that the unions, the school unions, the teachers' unions have such power that it's almost impossible to get rid of a teacher, even if he is molesting girls or boys or anybody. It's just almost impossible to do that. And it's very difficult because schools don't take their job seriously of noting, investigating, pursuing, and prosecuting perpetrators. So what we end up doing then is the taxpayers, like this article says, as for Michigan State University, $500 million financial settlement. Some of it will no doubt be covered by the university's general liability insurance, but the vast majority will likely be footed by the state's taxpayers and the university's students and alumni. I want you to think about that. Next time you think, well, whatever. Like one of the supervisors, I was told, said this about paying off people like Jason Parker and this person and that person. I said, well, that's what we have insurance for. I'll tell you, man, every time I use my insurance, they're always wanting to raise the rates, or I got to chip in some. By the way, I think I heard that the head of human resources, Megan Greavy, quit over in Sutter County. I found that interesting because she is now named in the lawsuit of Jason Parker with the county of Sutter. Now she says, I'm done over here. I'm out of here. Maybe she ought to go in to be a greeter at Walmart or something. Did you notice? You remember somebody brought this up to me the other day. Of course, I mean it was no. I don't forget it. Some things I forget. This I don't. Do you remember all the times the conservatives or the quote unquote Republicans said, when we take over the House and the Senate, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to remove Obamacare root and branch. Remember Mitch McConnell? He's just a liar. And we're going to defund Planned Parenthood, right? Remember all that? Defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood gets about $500 million taxpayer dollars a year. And they kill about 881 babies every single day. And did you notice they came out and criticized President Trump for calling the MS-13 gang animals? Let's see, you're killing babies, but you're calling President Trump that doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't kill MS-13 or babies or anybody. Call him an ant. That's a problem because he's calling somebody an. It's just like, I'm telling you, people have lost their minds in this country. So there's big news that the Congress did not have the Spaldings to do anything about Planned Parenthood, including Doug LaMalfa. Now, I wouldn't expect John Garamendi, who's the white Obama representing Yuba and Sutter counties, but Doug LaMalfa always purported to be pro-life when he was serving at the California legislature. But none of those guys are making a big pitch to defund Planned Parenthood, and they got control of all branches of government. Now, the word was that Trump is cutting off about, I think, 50 or 60 million. But that's only 10% of what they're getting, and it's money that comes through under Title X or Title 10. We don't even teach Roman numerals anymore, but for all you out there, X. If you see a big X somewhere, that equals 10. Title 10 funds. Those were supposed to help poor people with family planning. Now, that's a euphemism for killing babies, family planning, because that gives them birth control, and if the birth control doesn't control the birth or the fertilization of the egg, then it's got a little backup plan to, once the egg is fertilized, to poison it. Just thought I'd let you ladies know that if you were like saying, well, I take birth control, but I'm against abortion. Well, that birth control pill may be aborting your little kid for you, and you might not even know it. Do you know something that doctors do not tell women that? You'd think doctors are supposed to explain all that to ladies. But I found out that they don't do that. So this Title X money is supposed to help poor people. You know how we focus on poor people? We don't want poor people to have babies because then there'll be more poor people, right? Instead of rich people having stupid, spoiled kids, and they end up poor, right? Maybe we ought to cut the tubes or tie the tubes off them rich women. So we focus on minority people because minorities kind of like the slow folks of the race. They're a little retarded. So we do all that. Title X money goes down to those poor folks. And so what they're saying is those Title X funds were never supposed to be connected to abortion. But you know something? Isn't it interesting how the government, sometimes they enforce the law, and then sometimes they say, we don't want to enforce that. We just let that go. So that's what they've been doing for decades. Title X funds, they just, if you take Title X funds to do health stuff for women in the same building, you're not supposed to do an abortion. But they've just kind of ignored that. Isn't that interesting? Next time you get in trouble with the law, say, can't we just ignore it this time? Right? You get arrested for doing something stupid. Say, can't we just overlook it this time? I don't think I won't do that ever again. Why don't we just overlook it and just bring up Title X? Well, they always overlooked it in Title X. The officer probably won't know what Title X is, but anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Well, thank God for Trump that he actually, he just keeps chipping away at his promises. Did you notice that the Democrats were invited to go to celebrate the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem, and they didn't go. I thought they always like to fly on those junkets. All of them get on the plane and go to the climate junket over where'd they have it, Paris or somewhere, and they would fly all these jets over, even though it was going to have a big carbon footprint, to all attend the climate summit. They do that, but they don't want to go over, even though they say they all supported. Did you hear we played? Did you hear Bush? He's always misstating. Did you hear him say the city of Jerusalem, the city of Israel? He said, we're going to move the ambassador to the city of Israel. I thought, George, come on, man. You got to do better than that. That's hilarious. We're going to go over there and we're going to move the capital to the city of Israel. I said, George. At least he didn't say Crawford, Texas. Well, anyway, so those Democrats, even though Obama, this just shows you how full of crap these politicians are. They talk, and then when they get a chance to do it, they don't do it. They just don't do it. Let's see. Now, Trump, did you see how I watched that roundtable discussion? They had a bunch of law enforcement people from over here in California. They even had John Agostini from El Dorado County back there in Washington. They had a bunch of people from California talking about sanctuary state and how they were all going to stand against it. And so it was great because that's where Trump called the MS-13 people, said they're animals. Well, the media, it's just like Gallagher and Nielsen. They twist the words and they make it sound like something that it isn't. Like when Chris Carlos would make a statement like something like trying to explain how the district attorney really doesn't have anything to do with enforcing a sanctuary state situation. That would be the sheriff that's going to come into conflict with Homeland Security and immigration. Instead of being honest about that, they mistook his words, twisted his words, right? So the same thing happened with Trump, and they said, did you notice that the liberals now, they're for Hamas, they're for Hamas, they're for the Al-Qaeda, they're supporting Iran, they're supporting North Korea. Anybody that Trump has a problem with, they're taking the other side. So MS-13 has special meaning to me because for years I've worked with the Norteños and the Sureños locally, and the MS, not the MS, but the Hmong Nation, and there's a number of Hmong gangs, but the Norteños, Sureños, primarily Hispanic gangs, Crips and Bloods, Black. And so I've met people from all of them, and but the MS-13 was interesting because one day I got a call at the Church of Glad Tidings when I worked there from a hysterical woman. And some people think I'm too direct and I'm not kind enough. But anyway, I told her, hey, take it easy. I'm not going to be able to help you. And she said, oh, please. She kept begging me and wanted help. She was staying at Casa de Esperanza. She needed help. And so here's what happened. She's here today. It's been 8, 9, 10 years later now. She had been in the MS-13 gang, and when she wanted to leave, they tried to stab her and stabbed and killed her infant. And she fled with her older child, who, when I met him, the daughter was about 8 or 9 years of age, and they were hiding out at Casa de Esperanza, but she wanted to change her identity because they were coming for her. And so I'd never done that before in my life. I've heard of people doing that. So anyway, we worked at that over a period of months, and we hid her out up here, and we got her daughter's identity and her identity changed. And I just heard the term MS-13. I never really was that familiar with it, but it's interesting on this article that I was reading about MS-13. It was talking about them being down in. Well, in fact, they were referring in the roundtable discussion about the MS-13 in Fresno, California, and that's where this young lady was from, down in that area. But she escaped and got up here, and today she's safe, and her daughter graduated from high school, and they're involved in church up here, and she's doing good. But that was my introduction to MS-13. Now, when you talk about people, when they say, "Oh, they're a real animal," to me, if you get shot in a drive-by and you just get hit once, it's just like, hey, the guy's a criminal. He shot you, right? But if two gang members beat and hack a 16-year-old Houston teen to death using bats and machetes, and then they decapitate him, that takes it to don't you think that takes it to a whole nother level? So they caught the two guys, and they sentenced them to 35 years in prison, both from El Salvador. That's where the MS-13 hails from initially. Say, what are they doing up here? That's what I would like to ask. That's what I'd like to know. That's what Trump would like to know. But if you're a Democrat, old Nancy Pelosi said, well, everybody's got a little spark of the divine in them. It just takes a little harder to find, right? I meet some of these people down in the Yuba County Jail. In 2017, more than 10 MS-13 members stabbed a man more than 100 times in Maryland. They just didn't stab him a couple times and that'll do it. They did it 100 times, more than 100 times. They decapitated. They like to decapitate people. Mexicans down along the border like to decapitate people. And then they cut out his heart. Now that was special. They cut out his heart. So Miguel Angel Lopez Abrego of El Salvador. He was here illegally. We got a couple more minutes? One more minute. Okay. Here, let me give you another one. I'm just going to give you a sample of animals. MS-13 members shot an unidentified girl who was thought to be 15 in the head, and then they also shot her in the chest. They left her body in the middle of a busy street in Houston's Chinatown. The murderer said he killed her to appease Satan. He said, this is what the MS-13 gang member said, the beast did not want, beast is like satanic for all of you that are novices in this spiritual stuff. The beast did not want a material offering, but wanted a soul. This MS-13 member was from El Salvador originally, and he was here illegally. Back in 2003, Brenda Paz was famously murdered by MS-13 members after cooperating with police as an informant. Let's see. Well, I think we're about out of time. We'll be right back for another hour, and I'll talk a little bit more about these gangs. All right. We're into our last hour. This is Lou Benninger. You're listening to Live with Lou. And so I get all kinds of people telling me how to run the show, reminding me that the taxes out in Plumas Lake include all kinds of stuff. I think if you listened to the whole show, you would have got that. Or people say, people don't know who's talking on your radio show. I don't know. Every 5 minutes I'll have to say, just a little break here. This is Lou. 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 Right? Take it easy out there. Take it easy. Maybe you missed a moment. Your wife yelled at you at your husband or something. So I was talking about MS-13 gang members and how if you've never run into one, maybe you don't appreciate how gnarly it can get. So in 2017, 4 gang members were arrested for a spree of 10 murders in Las Vegas. You been to Las Vegas? I've been there a few times, done some tip training over there. The lady who was an informant, Miss Paz, P-A-Z, she was lured by a boyfriend on a fishing trip who the boyfriend then, along with his fellow gang members, stabbed her to death in front of a witness. So much for going fishing with the MS-13. So in 2014, MS-13 enforcers were deployed by a cartel to kidnap and torture teenagers in St. Paul, which they did. In 2012, Dennis Gil Bernardes, a Honduran native and a leader in the gang, was sentenced to 80 years for, among many other crimes, stabbing a man to death on the street in Washington, D.C. Then 4 men were hacked to death on Long Island, New York, and a 15-year-old girl was tortured, had a tattoo cut off, and then was stabbed to death. Now, you remember we started this discussion with MS-13 with the liberals being tremendously troubled in their heart because the President of the United States referred to this group that cuts people's tattoos off and tortures them, removes their head, stabs them 100 times, shoots them, a woman, a young girl, teenager, in the heart and in the head, cuts the heart out of somebody. Now, I know that, let's see, I think I thought maybe I had the definition. There's a definition for animal that is not just an animal, but it includes what I'm talking about right here. But I can't find it offhand, but why don't you look it up on Google, since you probably don't have a book called a dictionary. And you have animal, which is a creature, right? But then there's an animal that describes human beings that are gnarly. So let's see. There you have it. So the president, to me, just described those people like if I was sitting there and needed to describe them, that's how I would describe them, because my friend, they stabbed her baby to death. I thought, well, that would get my attention. And that got her attention. She'd never been the same since. All right. The other thing that the media, I notice, is just so perturbed by is that we have now another person that's been appointed to take over the Veterans Administration, right? I have particular interest in that position because I think that our military veterans should get the best and quickest medical care in the country. They should have the longest life possible, and therefore they should get, sometimes if people don't get proper medical care in a timely fashion, they come to pass quicker. And so I think veterans have earned, we promised them that we would take care of them. They've earned great care, quick care, easy care, convenient care, and they shouldn't have to travel a state away to find the care. So the president appointed his doctor, and that was rejected because they lied about him, basically. They told enough lies about him to throw enough stink in the air that they just threw in the towel. He withdrew. So now they've appointed a guy named Robert Wilkie. Probably none of us have heard of him. Robert Wilkie is the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. Wilkie is the principal advisor to the Secretary and Deputy Secretary of Defense for Total Force Management for Readiness. He's got a huge resume. National Guard and Reserve Component Affairs, Health Affairs, Training. He's in charge of all this. Personnel requirements and management, including equal opportunity, morale, welfare, recreation, da-da-da-da. Wilkie served under Robert Gates and Donald Rumsfeld as Assistant Secretary of Defense from 2005 to 2009, was the youngest senior leader in the department. He also served under Condoleezza Rice and the National Security. Pretty sharp guy. Graduate of the College of Naval Command and Staff. It just goes on and on and on. Do you think this guy would be qualified to run the Veterans Administration? Well, the Democrats can't find any redemptive elements in this guy. You know why? Because he's for choice. You remember choice? Like if you want to kill your baby, choice? This guy's choice is that veterans, if they can't get proper care from a fiasco of the VA medical system, right? If you have trouble at the DMV, then don't go to the VA because it's a big pain in the rear for a lot of people. For some people, I know people that their dads have been at the VA and they said, oh, they got wonderful care. Other people, nightmare. And so the Democrats' big problem with Mr. Wilkie is that he's a choice proponent. In other words, giving veterans the choice to go wherever they darn well please to get the medical care that they need and deserve. So God forbid, what we want is that, I don't know why we just don't have the government to provide our hamburger, our bread, our everything. Just let the government produce it all and see how it all works out. Venezuela's trying it. Cuba's trying it. Russia tried it. Let's just go the whole thing. But because we got to force, why would we create a government hospital system when we have a lot of great hospitals in this country? And you know something? The ones that people don't like, they go somewhere else. Did you know that? Just like if they go to a restaurant and they don't get a good meal, they go somewhere else next time. So people do the same thing with hospitals or ERs. If they don't like the service they're getting, they go someplace else. And then the ones that give really good service, they thrive, and the ones that don't give so hot service, they start having financial problems. Isn't that interesting? So the VA looks like they're getting a good guy. Now, my feeling on this is like, hey, how complicated is this? Besides the VA being a massive operation, so is like Apple, so is Hewlett-Packard, so is like General Electric, so is Toyota. So human beings have the ability to manage big stuff. The problem with government is they forbid you from firing retards, people that are perverts. Did you know there's perverts? The federal government will hire perverts because they think, well, they're not going to molest an old guy. They just prefer little guys or young guys. Did you know that? They hire them. Yeah, it's an okay deal for the federal government. So you got perverts running around the hospitals. It just, honestly, people, that's why we have problems is we can't get rid of losers. It's the same way with the school system. Anytime I talk about the schools, they go, oh, well, you hate all teachers. I never said that. That's what you said. I happen to know lots of great teachers. The problem is, it's just kind of like I bought some oranges the other day. And I always check them. I said, all these oranges, because you can see in there. I said, are the oranges in that bag all good oranges? They look good to me. Within 24 hours, one was just all white with that mold and everything. Now here's the way the school system would handle that. They'd say, well, no, we can't do anything about that molded orange. You have to leave that in there with them. And you just have to eat. You just have to eat right through there. When you get to that, hey, if you have to eat that one, you got to eat that molded one. That's how the school system works. The way I look at it, I want to get in and get that molded one out, wash the other ones off so they don't get all contaminated, right? But no, the school system says, no, you got it. It's a package deal. So when you can't get rid of the loser teachers, right? There's losers in every profession. There's loser pastors. There's loser mechanics. There's loser servers at a restaurant, right? There's ornery farmers. In every profession you find them, right? And if they're self-employed, hallelujah to them, right? They get what they deserve, right? If they treat people halfway decent, or people just think, oh, he's got a lousy bedside manner, but he got my cancer out, then good for them, right? I don't care about the bedside manner. I'm cancer-free. So anyway, but in the teaching profession, you're stuck with all the bad apples and the bad oranges and the rancid nuts. You got to keep them to the end. It pollutes the whole system. It drags the whole system into the toilet. So that's what we got going on here. Let's see. All right. These things, I've reported on some of this before. People coming in from other countries, and they rip off the government because the government, the founding fathers didn't want our government involved in all kinds of welfare stuff. They didn't want them involved in it at all. They didn't want them involved in education. And because the government can't manage anything well. Did you notice that? So wherever the government would give handouts, they can't keep up with the fraud. So this shocked me. The title is Somali Immigrants Run a $100 million daycare fraud. Now, I've been involved in daycares before. I know how they work. And the government kicks down money for people that qualify income-wise. So the government actually pays the daycare to take care of little Johnny because his parents are tweakers, right? And they don't make any money. That's how that works. So these Somalis come over here. They're Muslims. And, the founding fathers believed that this republic system of government would only work if people use self-discipline. In other words, they discipled themselves. In other words, they were religious folks who believed that honesty was important, hard work was important, and ripping people off and lying and not lying to people was also important, not doing those things. So if people would take care of themselves morally, then the system would work. But as soon as people figured out they could put their hand in the till and rip the government off and dip in and not work and mooch, the system would unravel. So the Muslims who come in here, they don't buy into that whole first part I just said about the Judeo-Christian belief system. And they just rip people off. And so these Somalis all set up these daycares, and then people actually invested in the daycares so they could, as the owners or the managers of them, defrauded the government. In other words, they were billing the government for kids that weren't even there. And then they were giving kickbacks to all, like if I put in $1,000, I would get money out of it, right? Because I'm an investor in the operation. This one fellow, Scott Stillman, he's a forensic examiner for the state of Minnesota. In other words, he looks at books. He's a forensic. He finds all the gnarly, not forensic cutting apart the body, but sorting out bureaucracy of money. He says this: we're working on and currently overwhelmed with significant fraud cases involving organized crime defrauding hundreds of millions of dollars. Significant amounts of these defrauded tax dollars are being sent overseas to countries and organizations connected to entities known to fund terrorism. Stillman wrote this to the supervisors at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. That's welfare. The internal controls in these programs really need to be examined. You know something? When you help somebody yourself, you have internal controls and you are examining the outcome and whether this is a worthwhile investment of your time and money when you're helping a person next door. When you're just kicking down checks or loading EBT cards, you don't know jack about what's going on out there. Stillman estimates $100 million in fraud a year is on the mark. A year, $100 million a year. 10 daycare companies are currently under investigation, suspected of overbilling the state millions of dollars, most of them owned by Somali immigrants. The issue is epidemic, very serious, said Stillman. Omar Jamal, a Somali community member told the community this. I'll repeat it. This is epidemic, very serious, he said. Is that the money is going out of the country. He's a guy that's speaking out against it. He said, Fox 9 said these daycare centers, starting a daycare center is a license to make money by stealing it from taxpayers. The fraud is so widespread that people buy shares of daycare businesses to get a cut of the huge public subsidies that are pouring in. Costs in Minnesota, not the United States, Minnesota, $100 million a year. Think about it in every state where you have Muslim immigrants. You know, they're all learning about this way to rip off and cash in on the government without doing much. Isn't it interesting? Oh, by the way, I know that the liberals just hate this, and they just thought, well, you know, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. President Trump donated his first quarter 2018, that's the fifth quarter so far, salary to the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, I know what they're saying. Oh, well, he's worth millions. It's just like nothing to him, right? But if he didn't give it, then they'd say, well, he's a big rich guy. How come we're having to pay him? He's like worth billions of dollars. You know, people are just so weird. So he'd given it, the support is going for mental health and peer support. I like that. Like people that need to have PTSD help and all that kind of stuff. So that's the fifth time. That's $100,000 a time. That's $500,000 so far. Okay. Not too bad. Half a $1,000,000. So he's been giving it. Some went to restoring national battlefields. Some went to funding STEM focus camps, science, technology, mathematics, etc. Some went towards fighting the opioid epidemics. Another 100,000 went to transportation, building up our infrastructure. We'll be right back. All right, we're on our last segment here for today. At noon, we're going to have a sports talk show, and then I think, is Zach still coming? Zach? 6 o'clock, our friend Zach does a sports show, and then what's the guys coming tomorrow? Are they coming at 1 o'clock? Political Spotlight? Is that it? Community Political Spotlight? Last week, I listened to it. I got sent to me their clip where they had John Missler, who's running against Randy Fletcher in the 5th District. That's the Foothill District. And they interviewed John Missler about this whole issue with the Yuba County Water Agency and how in the world 100 farmers are getting millions of dollars, not from what they grow, not from the crops they produce, or the profitable businesses they run, farming businesses, but cashing in on selling water that they didn't produce, that they don't own, that the people of Yuba County own because they put together Bowler's Bar Dam. How did 100 pumpers end up making all this money, millions of dollars year after year, and then the Yuba County Water Agency proudly proclaimed that that's just the way it is? So I heard, I don't know whether John Missler's going to be back again tomorrow. I heard that they ran out of time because it was all new ground for the guys that were interviewing him. So they were just kind of, it takes a while to get your brain around it. It took me a while. I met with a couple people and read a bunch of stuff about it. And so anyway, John Missler may be back on tomorrow at 1 o'clock here if you want to listen. And I think if you go to One Eye Blind Media, is it called Community Political Spotlight? Did I get it right? So you can write it. He's writing it down for me, so we'll get it right for you. So you could go back and listen to. If you're a Yuba, particularly if you're a Yuba County resident, you should listen to this discussion. It's pretty fascinating, actually. And if you go to One Eye Blind Media, and Wikiman is writing this down for me because I can't read lips, and he's on through. I can see him in there, but I can't. It's Yuba Sutter Political Spotlight. My apologies, Yuba Sutter Political Spotlight. So if you go there and look at last week's date, so it'd probably see tomorrow's the 20th, so last week was the 13th, I guess, and check that discussion out. It's about an hour talk. It's fascinating. John really has studied it for years. He used to be on the school board, on the supervisors, and was actually a member of the Yuba County Water Agency. And check that out. I wanted to just make a couple comments. In the Territorial Dispatch online right now, territorialdispatch.biz, I wrote an article last week called Casino Birthing Pains. In 2001, 2002, the Yuba County Board of Supervisors, three of them, Mary Jane Griego from the Olivehurst area, Al Amaro from the Linda area, and Bill Simmons in the Marysville area, voted, with two voting against, to enter into a contract with a Butte County Maidu tribe. They refer to themselves as Enterprise Rancheria, or the Estom Yumika Maidu tribe, Enterprise Rancheria, and they entered an agreement to bring their tribe to Yuba County. It's called reservation shopping. And the argument, which was a lie, was that they'd had their reservation taken from them. In fact, I saw a guy post something somewhere this week, some bright bulb, claiming, well, their reservation is below Oroville Dam, as if all of a sudden one day they were sitting growing corn and smoking the peace pipe, and all of a sudden water began to come up around them and they floated down the river. And so, but what happened back then, it's all a matter of public record, is that there wasn't a tribe, there was a couple families, and they owned this property that was allotted to them by the government, tribal property, and they weren't doing anything with it. There wasn't anything going on back in the 1960s with casinos. They didn't know what to do with the property, so they were offered some money for it, and they sold it, and they pocketed the money and were happy about it, right? They didn't pay anything for it. They got it free, and they said, oh, it's an opportunity to cash out, and they sold it. And that was the end of it. They didn't give a crap about a reservation or anything else. They were Native Americans. I don't know what they thought about all that. But the fact is, they sold an asset and walked away with some cash in the bank. Later, 30, 40 years go by, right? And all these tribal groups that have reservations got permission to put a casino on their reservation. And so this group says, well, now we sold our property, but so investors, Gerald Forsyth out of Chicago, convinced them, hey, we'll just create another reservation out of thin air by convincing a couple, like three idiot supervisors from Yuba County, to let us use part of their county and have them help fund it. And we'll tell the public that they're going to make a lot of money on it. And the public's stupid enough to just think, oh, well, I want to go to a casino. I like to go to casinos. And somehow it's going to bring jobs. I think jobs are great. I think people need a job. The problem is just what's happening now. The government ends up with the government. What is the government? The government exists because of your tax dollars and my tax dollars in Yuba County. And we are funding the services that are being rendered to that 40 acres that are now off the tax rolls. And so recently, there's this thing called a Memorandum of Understanding, which was an agreement that was drafted of all people. This is unbelievable. You'd think if I was on the Board of Supervisors and I was going to do a casino with a tribal group, I would not draft the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, myself. You know why I wouldn't do that? I'm fairly literate. I wouldn't do something that I'd never done before. I would find somebody that had done a lot of those Memorandum of Understandings to make sure I didn't get screwed, or the public of Yuba County wouldn't get screwed. But no. Here's what generally happens when you get elected to and become a Board of Supervisors. You start going into enough meetings where they go, oh, there's Mike Leahy. Well, let's give a hand for Mike Leahy. Well, there's Jim Whitaker. Well, let's have Jim stand, and you hear that enough, and pretty soon you think you're God incarnate. And so whatever you need, a guy has appendicitis, you think, I can fix that, right? A guy needs a property line adjustment. Oh, I know all about that. Welfare. Oh, yeah, I got that. So when they needed an MOU drafted, we took a fry cook by the name of Mary Jane Griego, and we took a guy that used to work for the government in Weights and Measures, Don Schrader, and they volunteered to write the MOU. Is that amazing? Not attorneys, not like experts in the Bureau of Indian Affairs laws. We have two supervisors that their only credentials was that they got a popularity vote and got elected. And they drafted an MOU that the county of Yuba is stuck with till Jesus returns. And there was no conditions written into it, like what if the unexpected happens? Like what if we draft it in 2002, approve it in 2002, but let's just say the tribe, like hindsight is 2020, right? Let's just say the tribe doesn't get around to launching until 2020. Do we want to have all these numeric figures that they have to pay us to reimburse us for costs? Like, do you know what the cost of a gallon of gas was back then in 2000, 2001, 2002? It was about $1.60. Now we're getting to $4 a gallon. So that means the sheriff's department has got to serve that tribal organization, drive out there, drive back, drive out there, drive back, patrol, at $4 a gallon this year. But they made an agreement to serve them with a certain amount of money being given to them at $1.60. Do you think the wages have gone up since 2000, 2001, 2002? So these really bright bulbs, Mary Jane Griego and Don Schrader, wrote this without any escalators in it to adjust for the fact that it may not launch in the next 24 or 48 months. What if it took 20 years to launch? And so now we have a situation where they're supposed to break ground next month, June. But before they can, they had to have an agreement with a local fire department. Do you think the MOU brilliant drafters would have thought to say you need to make an agreement with Wheatland Fire because you're in that district? Just say it that way. What they did was they said you need to make an agreement with they called them Plumas Brophy back then. You need to make an agreement with Plumas Brophy or some other department in the county or any department from outer Slombodia. In other words, any department anywhere in the world. We can have the Al-Qaeda department fly in from Afghanistan to fight a fire. Totally do whatever you want to do as long as you got fire. So now what we have, where the reason you have districts and jurisdictions is so somebody's got to support that fire department. So you have an area, and everybody in that area pays some of their taxes towards that fire department, say in Wheatland area. But now we've got a situation where not only is the 40 acres off the tax rolls, they don't pay any taxes on that. But Wheatland, and that's, in other words, those taxes, that any help that the Wheatland Fire Department would get from those 40 acres is gone forever. Forever. That's it. Forever. And so now the fact that they won't negotiate with Wheatland means that right in the middle of their entire jurisdiction, or their service area, is going to be this island of 40 acres that Oliver's Fire now, because Mary Jane Griego, when she got voted out of office by her folks in her district, she went and got herself a spot on the Oliver's Public Utility Commission, which runs Oliver's Fire, and lo and behold, her little partners over there at the Enterprise Rancheria now just seems to feel that Oliver's Fire is the way to go, and so they're going to drive 5 miles out of their district, and the only thing they're going to serve in the Wheatland district is just one entity, and they're just going to cash in on it. Now, if something happens next door at the amphitheater, then Wheatland will have to show up for that. Now, that's screwy, isn't it? Didn't that sound stupid? Well, that's exactly what the supervisors okayed them to do. And the supervisors are arguing this. Andy Vasquez voted against it. But the supervisors said, well, in the MOU, it didn't give us any leeway to stop them. Isn't this great? Just one supervisor. The MOU said all we had a decision on is whether or not they choose a fire department. It wasn't that they had to choose that fire department, right? So in other words, if the MOU would have said you need to, like they did, we didn't give them options on law enforcement. We said you got to choose the Yuba County Sheriff's Department. Why didn't we say, hey, you could choose the Reno Police Department? But they just left it, and you know something? Isn't it a coinkydink that Mary Jane Griego was one of them that designed that MOU, and now she's on the OPUD. And Mary Jane, you know, I don't know whether you ever follow these, you know, where these politicians get their money. She keeps getting these $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 checks from these enterprise people. It's kind of nice the way life works out, isn't it? So the supervisor said, well, you know, doesn't matter what we really felt. We had to just go with what the MOU said. Well, they could have put some pressure on them and say, hey, you know, we think you know, it's going to goof up the support for our different agencies. And so we want you to go with Wheatland. Do us a solid. We did you a solid back in the day, and we wrote a flaky MOU, but we can renegotiate the MOU if we want to, but we don't want to renegotiate it right now. Why don't you just do us a solid and do Wheatland a solid? No, they didn't do that. They just said, well, they just did the easy way out. Somebody said, well, they don't want to offend the Indians. They're a sovereign tribe, like North Korea. So all along, I've been thinking that there's been negotiations going on between the tribal people and Wheatland, but I talked to one of the OPUD directors the other day, OPUD, and they said, oh, no, we've been negotiating with them. I thought, you know something? And again, I don't fault people for wanting to get the best deal. The MOU says you can just negotiate. If they want to negotiate with Orange County Fire Department, they can negotiate at the other end. They don't have to do anything. They could start their own fire department. That's what the MOU said. Funny how that turned out that way. Why wouldn't they say you could have used Sutter County Sheriff or Yuba City Police instead of the Yuba County Sheriff's Department? Or even Marysville Police. Marysville Police always short of money. Funny how that worked out, isn't it? Well, it's just politics, people scheming and conniving, left and right, just ripping people off. So just a sad situation. Well, before I go today, I want to give another shout out to remind you to go. Don't check these. Just don't vote for somebody because you like their sign or your neighbor's voting for them. That ain't right. You know, a lot of these guys nowadays and gals, they have phone numbers that they just say, call me up, like on Facebook. They have their phone number. You can call them up and talk to them. And so this Monday, 2 days from now, the 21st, go out to Glad Tidings at 1179 Eager Road and check out Chris Carlos. He's going to be there. You can ask him all your questions. Amanda Hopper has not been attending these forums. And so... but you can talk to Carlos and see whether you like that guy or not. And also Wendell Anderson and Tang Seichow are going to be there on behalf of their campaigns running for the Yuba County Sheriff. So go check that out. And then I wanted to also just remind you that Elite Security, I'm telling you, I'm glad those guys... In my area, did I tell you, Wikiman, did I tell you I had a tweaker in my garage? I had a tweaker in my garage. The guy was working on the house across the street, and I work out of my house now, so I had a knock on the door. I went down and I saw, oh, there's Tim. I could see he has dreadlocks. And so, what's this? We got is this a nasty gram? Okay. So he had dreadlocks. I could see him in the window of the door, and when I opened the door to say hi to Tim, Tim was kind of looking sad, he wasn't looking sad, he was looking really serious, and he had a guy by the arm, a little Mexican dude. He was like all spun on methamphetamines, and he knew me. When I looked at him, I said, I know you, and he knew me, and he said his name. I said, what were you doing in my garage? He said, I needed something to drink. I was really thirsty. I said, dude, why don't you just knock on the front door? I'd give you something to drink. I said, why don't you come through the front door instead of the back door? And anyway, I ended up just letting him go because anymore they just catch and release, right? Because we reduced all those laws, so they don't arrest anybody for drugs anymore. They just catch and release. So I thought, no, why wait? That's my money, right? Catch and release. It's wasting my tax dollars. So I said, just let this dude go. And so anyway, the reason I bring that up is Monty Hecker with Elite Universal Security. These guys do this kind of work where they track down these problems. And whether you got a business or a home, or you're the government, they can help bring some security when law enforcement is not around to do that. In fact, I was out in front the other night, and the Marysville PD came by and said, hey, we're looking for a guy that's riding a bike, towing another bike because he stole it. And then I had to call in a bunch of guys at 2:30. I mean, Bob Bendorf, the county official for Yuba County, he's created Tweakerville in my part of the city. That's a bad sign. I got to wait till next week to tell you the rest of the story. So thanks for listening. Hang around here. These guys are going to explain if you want to bet on sports and stuff. These guys will help you know who's going to win and how they're going to do it. All right. See you next week.